Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Loren Live. I'm your host, Loren Culp. And on tonight's show, I have a special guest, Pete Serrano, who will be joining me shortly. Pete is an attorney from the Tri-Cities area here in Washington State, and he's been standing up for citizens' rights in a big way. He's got multiple lawsuits pushing back against the idiots who are running the state of Washington into the ground, right? Running the state into the ground. So we're going to get into the details and how these things affect you. And after I'm done talking with Mr. Serrano, I have a very important message for all of you. So stay till the very end. You might even get a little bit of a laugh out of what I got to say right at the very end. So that's tonight's show. Let's roll the intro.
And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing, history will record with a great...
I will not violate my oath of office. We are free individual citizens. We are Americans. Quiet on the set. It's go time. Mr. Serrano, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Welcome to Loren Live.
Thank you, Loren. Appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. Could you just give a brief introduction of yourself for the folks that are watching?
Sure. So I'm an attorney. I'm actually originally from California, so I'm a little bit crazy that I moved up here to find refuge from the crazy Californians. Been practicing law for about a dozen years. Originally, what brought me up here was I was working for the Hanford site for the Department of Energy. And then fast forward, COVID hits. And I sit on Pasco City Council. I had a lot of small businesses reach out to me and say, Mr. Serrano, Pete, what can we do to preserve our businesses? And I kept looking around, and I remember I was working out with my buddy in his garage. Gyms were closed. And the only guy that could do something was the guy in the mirror. And I realized, okay, let's bring in a reopen Pasco ordinance. That wasn't successful. I had Democrats who wouldn't allow me to have it heard. And then ultimately I jumped in and we filed a lawsuit a little over a year ago on behalf of one single prison guard in Coyote Ridge in Franklin County. And now we're about 10 lawsuits in, other advocacy pieces as well.
So a good lawyer, it sounds like you understand what the Constitution says. You understand citizens' rights and government's role, right?
Absolutely. And it's our job as the citizens to keep the government in check. And, we're all empowered to do that through Public Records Act, through other audit processes. And then people like me have the tools to bring the lawsuits. So it's a collective, collaborative effort.
That's absolutely awesome. George Washington said that the Constitution, in relation to the Constitution, that its only keepers are we the people. And so it's good to know that, lawyers get a bad rap all the time. I'm sure you've heard all the lawyer jokes that you can stomach, right? It's really refreshing to talk to a lawyer that understands the role of government and has that ability to stand up for we the people.
Well, absolutely. For me, I looked at my three kids. Now they're 9, 6, and 3. And there's no future for them if no one stands for them, right? And I think that's everybody's passion project is their child, their grandchild, some family member. And so it was really easy for me to say, hey, I'm going to leave my government job that's cushy with a pension and say, forget it. I'm going to fight for their rights.
That's awesome. We need more people like you. So recently, you've challenged the magazine ban, right? The high capacity magazine ban here in Washington State. Can you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, so a little over a month ago, we filed against Senate Bill 5078, which has been enacted into law, and it's enforceable for the sales, manufacture, or distribution of larger 10 rounds or more, magazines with 10 rounds or more. Ironically, the guns themselves aren't prohibited. So what kicked us off was, obviously we knew about this law. I actually tried to go to Sportsman's Warehouse and buy my wife, an AR with a 30-round magazine, put it in the cart. And this was early July. This was actually late June, and it was still for sale. The bill hadn't passed, and they told me that I couldn't pick it up. So I could buy it. I just couldn't get the gun because it held a 30-round magazine, because that was the sales of a 10-round or more. And so upon Senate Bill 5078's arrival into law, it was signed in by Jay Inslee after passing the legislature this spring. Let's be clear here. Bob Ferguson has been on a warpath against guns for, as you're well aware, with 1639, kind of what catapulted you into the limelight, not willing to enforce something against your oath of office, right? Bob Ferguson was actually a proponent of this for the past 2 legislative cycles. And so we challenged it. We brought it in Yakima County Superior Court because we wanted a judge who was elected by the local people. Well, our first, I don't want to call it a misstep. The first thing we did was we served Bob Ferguson in Yakima at one of his own events. And then literally the next day he removes it to federal court because he knew he had a better venue there, which is fine. And then 2 weeks later, we had a motion to intervene for an alliance for gun safety. And so right now we're waiting on the court to decide whether or not that alternate group can come in and join the state. I mean, not that our tax dollars are insufficient to fight our constitutional rights, but so they believe. And with that, we're still fighting it. We are seeking injunctive relief. We're seeking declaratory relief, which is the court saying, no, this is unconstitutional. And we pled both the state and federal constitution. And those are critical elements to what we believe will save our constitutional rights.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, Bob Ferguson is not a friend of the Constitution, of the Second Amendment, of the state constitution. He pushed 1639, which got all semi-automatics identified now as so-called assault weapons. So, which is ridiculous because, assault is an action, right? It's not a weapon. And it's funny because, the left, if somebody gets murdered by a hammer or run over by a car, it's not an assault car. It's not an assault hammer. I dealt with a murder up in Ferry County where the person used a hammer, just a regular old hammer that you have hanging around the house, murdered a guy. But, and everybody knows that supports the Second Amendment, or most people do, that more people are killed by hands and feet than they are by any rifle of any kind. So this is nothing more than a smokescreen because they want to disarm people. And my opinion, they want to disarm us because they want to do things that might have the people stand up and say no.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have parental rights under attack, when you have bodily integrity under attack, vis-a-vis the COVID shots, ultimately, the further we give, if we have nothing to protect us, it will just be taken.
Absolutely. So other than that, you've got other litigation as well, right? Things that are involving the governor. Can you elaborate on those other things?
Yeah, absolutely. In early April, we brought a lawsuit challenging 2 of the governor's proclamations, 21-14 and 20-05. Those were the ones that required COVID shots for hospital healthcare workers, for other state employees, which we know Jay Inslee has now issued a directive, which is different than an actual emergency proclamation. But we're challenging those because at the time in March of 2022, when he declared a state of emergency in all counties of the state of Washington, and anyone that knows our geography, there are 39 of those. in all counties of the state of Washington, there were 5 counties or 7 counties, date dependent, where there were 0 cases. And there were up to 15 cases where there were less than 10. Now, these weren't highly populated counties. We know that. Nonetheless, how do you declare a perpetual state of emergency in all counties? If you would have said the state of Washington, that might be arguable. But by declaring it in all counties and then having counties with 0 or less than 10, the question we posed before the court, and it's still being heard, we're going through the discovery process. I just got some information from the state. Of course, it didn't help clarify their position. So we're going to have to seek more information. But our question is, how do you declare a state of emergency in all counties when there were counties with 0 cases? And that's the state's data. It's not ours. We didn't make it up. Went onto the website, the Department of Health's dashboard, pulled down the numbers, 0, 0, 0. Here are the 5 counties, Jay. Explain. And so that's currently under litigation. And we'd love to see that, because what that would do is it would modify the way he has to declare an emergency. And by statute, he's required to retract or rescind the state of emergency once the state of emergency or the mess, if you will, has disappeared. And in this case, with 0 COVID cases, how can you declare that it's not been restored?
Well, it's been said a lot. I think I've heard it numerous times, that power given to the government and those in charge is rarely given up. And that Jay Inslee is a prime example. He's been basically a dictator over this state for the last couple years at least. And, he's got that power. He doesn't want to give it up, and he's not giving it up. And we don't have anybody in mass in the state legislature that is going to stand up against him. There's a lot of worthless legislators and senators that we have representing us right now, and they're not pushing back hard enough. They either don't have the voice or they don't have the willpower or the backbone to do it. But yeah, he's been a dictator over this state, over us, for years. So is there anything else that you're working on? And by the way, is that the case that you just mentioned, is that in state or federal court?
That one's in state court. It's up in Thurston County. And one thing that I think is really important about that case is it's titled Silent Majority Foundation versus Inslee. And what we used was this thing called organizational standing. So as we build up our followers, those who support us through donations, volunteers, etc., we can claim more turf, if you will, more of a strong standing element to bring a lawsuit on behalf of the people. And so fundamentally, the title of Silent Majority Foundation should really be We the People, We the Washingtonians versus Jay Inslee. And I really love that, because we wanted to bring this back in the name of the people. And fundamentally, we did that. You've asked about other things that we're doing. We've worked on some advocacy pieces. If you're aware, the governor issued Directive 2113, which was the directive requiring the shot or continued shots for state workers. Then he directed Office of Financial Management to actually implement rulemaking. We worked with Informed Choice of Washington, Pacific Justice Institute, and another attorney, a lady named Joy Lockerbie. Hopefully I can say her name on air. And we all collaborated and built out this 8 or 10 page opposition to the rulemaking. Literally the next day, even though the hearing was the following week, OFM, Office of Financial Management, pulled their rulemaking, and then Jay Inslee modified his directive. Now, he says it's due to the union pressure. I don't know whether it was ours, the unions, or some compilation of both. So we're constantly looking at stuff. The other day, my wife turned me on to a rulemaking from Department of Ecology about confined animal feed operations. Well, that sounds benign, but when they go from 10,000 head of cattle or 50,000 poultry to an undefined number, the question for me is, how does that impact your farmer? You're in Grant County. I'm here in Franklin. We get a lot of people raising livestock, hens laying eggs. What is that going to look like when ecology says, oh, you've polluted too much? Well, I only have 200 200 head, right? So that's our problem with our government is it's got this blank check to do what it wills. And then to your point, you have some of these legislators who don't stand up.
Yeah. The role of the government, it's clearly defined, right? It's enumerated and defined in the Constitution, but for decades, and it's getting worse and worse now, they've operated outside of the confines of the rule book, the Constitution. And that limits what people can do. The government now is pretty much taxing and regulating everything that we're involved in. Everything that we buy, everything that we do is pretty much regulated and taxed. And so it's really good to see people like you pushing back. And is there a website or social media where people can keep up on what you're doing or support what you're doing?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. SMFJB. So just think silent majority FJB.org. So smfjb.org is our website. We have a Facebook. I think we have a Twitter account. We also have an Instagram account. So Silent Majority Foundation on Facebook, as well as on other social media. But again, SMFJB. We've got as much of our information. We've got our blogs are up there. We try to put our lawsuits up there. We want the people to read what we're doing. I think this is very important. We're not hiding what we're pleading. We want that to be out there in the open. We want, as we get discovery, as we do different depositions, things like that, we want that information in the people's hands. Because if I ask a question of the government, it benefits no one if Pete Serrano knows the answer. It benefits everyone if I have it and I share it. And so through our social media, through our smfjb.org, our website, we've got both opportunities to kind of interact through our blog space as well as information out there.
So if people want to find you, they can go direct to your website. They could actually just do an internet search for Silent Majority Foundation.
That is correct.
And find you. Okay. And is this just a Washington State organization, or tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, as of right now, we're only working here in Washington State. We were founded by me and some other folks that are in Snohomish County. Our directors are myself, Vincent Cavallari, who's actually running for Congress against Susan Del Bene. She's another mass problem, former Microsoft money from her husband. Anyway, up in Snohomish County, Vincent Cavallari is a phenomenal guy. Rob Waits is another one of our directors down here in Tri-Cities. And so we are primarily focusing on Washington, but we did just hire an attorney out of Colorado who's worked very closely as a former assistant attorney general. I think she went a little rogue and was fighting for the state and then realized how bad and broken the system was. And she was defending the Department of Health. One of the real critical elements to our caseload right now is health freedom issues, whether it's vaccine mandates or if it's defending doctors and other medical professionals. And so we hired out of Colorado. We may start doing work there. We'd love to get into Tennessee, South Carolina, one, because I've got family there, but two, because we believe those are different issues, right? They're not having Jay Inslee's, but they still have government overreach. So we'd love to see what it looks like to be in a more friendly atmosphere, but maybe really digging into what does this government overreach look like? Because if we're successful here, we know they're going to keep digging. Mm-hmm. And so maybe a premonition of what we're going to see on the back end.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. So everybody out there listening, besides sharing this video, make sure that you get to Silent Majority Foundation's website, support them if you can. This is important work. The left loves to have lawsuits to shut everything down, to go after businesses and conservatives. So it's good to see people that standing up for the Constitution, standing up for citizens' rights. So Silent Majority Foundation, you guys support it as much as you can. So Pete, you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to tell people, it's twofold. One, we're not going anywhere. We are going to keep fighting. To your point about having the weapons. You can pry it out of my cold dead hands. Same thing with my law degree and my license. You can pry it out of my hands. I'm going to fight. We're going to fight for your rights, for our children's rights, for everyone's grandkids' rights. We are seeking to preserve this state. That is our fundamental goal. And then the other element is we are just consistently working on refining everything that we're doing. We've been working on election integrity issues. We wrote some letters to several of the auditors. We even had Franklin County and one of the other counties actually told us, oh, hey, we're going to change our procedures to ensure that we're retaining the documents as required by law. And we're going to tweak some of the processes. So we're seeing little snippets. And so that to me is the door's open. Our foot's wedged in. We're going to kick it open at some point. So have your hope. I know it feels like desperate times. It is really hard and it's soul sucking sometimes to be here stuck in Washington. But there are people like Loren, people like us who are out there fighting. So have hope, have faith, and we know God's in control. We're going to keep fighting, and we know that he's at the helm. I don't know what that means, but there is a better tomorrow.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always say never give up, never give in, always stand up for what's right, stand up for America. So I appreciate you standing up for the citizens here in Washington State, Pete, very much. And thanks for joining me. If you have anything new you want to come back on the show, just get a hold of me, and we'll have you back on to update everybody.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Loren.
All right. Thank you. All right, you guys, I told you don't leave until the end, right? So we'll stick around. But Silent Majority Foundation, you guys support it as much as you can. They're doing some good work for us. So I want to thank you all for joining me. Thank you for sticking around. I'm going to continue to do this show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. as long as all of you watch it and share it. I'm also going to be releasing some other videos related to police work, true cases I've been involved in, and tips for dealing with the police in all kinds of situations that you might find yourself in. And I'll be doing some videos on life in general as well. So it's not going to be all politics all the time. So I'm going to be doing all kinds of things. And believe me, I've got some stories to tell. On my YouTube and Rumble, my handle is Chief Loren Culp. So if you would, please go to YouTube and Rumble and subscribe to my channels and get set up to be notified when I post new videos. I'm slowly moving away from Facebook just because we all know why. They stomp on me all the time. So the word doesn't get out. So I'm also on Truth Social, getting moved over into there. But I'm slowly moving away from Facebook. So along with this live every Tuesday, I plan on posting at least one other video every Saturday. So I've got a lot of content coming your way. And like I've always said, you guys, never give up, never give in, always stand for what's right. So get over to YouTube and Rumble and follow me over there. So I want to let everyone know all as well. I've got a message for everyone watching this show. If this show has offended you in some way, if this show or any of my shows create any emotional damage for you, then this is for you. Good night, everybody.
Emotional damage.